Hey guys, this is Joe. Today I want to introduce you to our partner Vanta. Achieving ISO 27001 or SOC 2 compliance can unlock major growth for your company and build customer trust, but the process can be time intense and costly. Vanta automates compliance, getting your audit ready quickly and saving up to 85% of associated costs. And Vanta scales with your business, helping you enter new markets. Join 7,000 global companies like Atlassian, Flow Health, and Quora that trust Vanta. Claim 20% off Vanta at vanta.com/startupradio. That's vanta.com, spelled vanta.com/startupradio.
Welcome to Startuprad.io, your podcast and YouTube blog covering the German startup scene with news, interviews, and live events.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Joe from Startuprad.io. I'm bringing you today episode 200 of our Startuprad.io podcast. You can find all of our podcasts on all popular podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, Stitcher, or even in mainland China on Himalaya. Back in 2014, I was with a German-speaking podcast, and one interview guest requested to do his startup interview in English. So I started doing startup interviews in English. This is what's today Startuprad.io. From the start, we want to show you the breadth and the depth of the German-speaking startup scene. Therefore, we cover many different subjects, and we split the podcast in sub-podcasts where you can follow only the subjects you are interested in, like FinTech Germany by Startuprad.io or Blockchain Germany by Startuprad.io, plus this month in German startups. We are also trying to show you more startups than just the ones who already get international press coverage. The podcast addresses more B2B startups, and from our usual interview frame, guest, problem, startup, it appears we are more appealing to serious investors than casual startups observers. If you are one of the exceedingly early subscribers, thank you very much. If you're not, I had a changing team of co-hosts and people in the background supporting me throughout the years. I could only get 3 people to talk with me about Startuprad.io, but this was in time of Corona plus holiday season, and a lot of people had to work on their backlog from Corona. So let me introduce you to the people in chronological order. First is Elda, who was a contributor in 2014 and 2015.
Hi, Jörn. It's so cool to see you and to listen to you again. I have really right now special feelings, nostalgic feelings to hear you.
When I've been looking at what we did together, I found a handful of interviews as well as a few reports, interviews you did at events. We have to tell our audience at the time you were working with us, it was at the time when we did just an audio podcast, so there's almost no video evidence of your presence here at Startuprad.io.
Yeah, right. Absolutely right. We did only audio.
Can you tell our audience a little bit about your experience being with Startup Radio, how it was in the early days?
I can tell really a lot about that, but just a few things. I think working was really a great opportunity to meet interesting people, and just imagine who could be more interesting than startuppers. And I was curious, and I'm still curious right now. And I think that for doing the podcast like this one is a great opportunity to quench your curiosity. Yeah, you can read books, you can look videos, you can search on internet, but if you are quenching your curiosity by making the dialogue with the people who are really in this field, that's I find the best way to do.
Looking back, is there like any memorable stories that you have from the time? Any interesting interview you did?
Yeah, I remember times when I did interview with a startup called Litza. At that time, they were not that popular as they became later on. And what was funny, the interview went at their home because their home was at that time also their office. And I had the chance really to see how it was all developing, in which environment. And I was wondering really at that time because I think 9 out of 10 interviews that I did were about digital technology. And Lidze was about basically making food. Yeah. And I was really like amazed and used this opportunity to ask guys like, hey, how is it to be a non-digital startup?
We may add for our audience, because most people are neither from Frankfurt nor are they from Germany. I was just looking it up. As we've been speaking, they sold their company in late 2019, early 2020 for more than 8 million. Basically, it's a low carb pizza, what those guys are doing. Very interesting stuff, a very interesting food startup. And you've been traveling for Startuprad.io, right?
Right. I have been at a couple of events, some like our big events. And I think that's a great opportunity. When you're doing podcasts, you can call yourself like a journalist and you get the badges as a journalist. And it gives a lot of advantages. And just a few of them that you come always first to the room. When it's a larger event, that makes really sense. You go and you sit at the first row. You have a chance to go at the back of the stage and catch people, personalities who are like super popular. And without doing such podcasts, I mean, it couldn't be possible because this is something that you cannot buy. Maybe I will mention that also because it's connected with each other. Working with the podcast gave me a lot of skills on how to work basically with the content. And that helped me also a lot. So how to tell the stories, for example, how to interview the people, how to do the post-production, how to distribute that content. So basically, I had the chance to be a side journalist, yeah, part-time journalist. And this is something that I could recommend everyone.
What have you been doing since you left Startuprad.io? You're now a freelancer and co-founder and co-host of a meetup, right?
Right. So basically, I was doing the meetup even at that time. I started it 6 years ago, and it became very successful because I just had this interest myself. Because it's amazing what you can do with the data and with the data science. And I just wanted to bring people with the same interest in the form of meetups. And we had, like, for example, at our second meetup, just 8 people. And right now we have like 600 people at some big events. And we do online stuff right now. And the topics are so wide, the range of topics is so wide right now. So it's a very cool thing to run communities.
Considering the current situation, do you believe that meetups in person, like non-digital physical events, are they coming back at one point?
I hope. I'm not really a wizard, but I wouldn't really I could not imagine if people just could not meet physically because it's an energy in any case. And I hope that maybe they won't be like big events in the nearest future. And online events, they have a lot of advantages. So, and at Frankfurt Data Science, we did many online events. And it's very nice. I think it's a very good idea to combine on-site events with the live streaming and live stream then online, because online you have a plenty of formats that you can use offline and vice versa.
I see. Any famous last words, any wishes for the future?
I just would like to recommend, because I had this experience, if you are interested in some topic, and in this case in startups, just start doing that. And the advantage of that, it's basically not a full-time job. And if you are working, you just have a chance to easily get into the topic, into the real life, not just books and internet. And I just could recommend. And it's so easy right now to do everything because there's everything you need. There's a lot a lot of technologies available. So if you are thinking if you should do it or not, just do it.
Just do it. Great last words. Nothing I would like to add here. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure working with you and looking forward to talk to you again, hopefully in person.
Thanks for inviting, Jörn. And I wish Startup Radio good luck, success.
After Startuprad.io, Elda became co-founder and co-host of Data Science Meetup here in Frankfurt, as well as a freelance consultant. Let's move a little bit further. 2015, Christian is with Startuprad.io since the May 2015 news. This is really a long time. Thank you for your support, Chris. If you don't know Chris, he hails from Northern Hesse, the German state in which also Frankfurt is located. He is a freelance journalist and newsletter author living in New York City in Manhattan, working for startup outlets, the German press agency, and teaching future journalists from around the world. Actually, he even does teach around the world. He flies frequently to Europe and the Middle East for that.
So, yeah, nice to hear you. And I think it's also very hot here, but I haven't been outside yet. But the last couple of days in New York have been very humid.
My understanding is you have right now 30 degrees Celsius, which is 86 Fahrenheit.
There you go. But then we have always this like felt temperature, however it's called. And so, yeah, anyway.
Back in 2015, you've been reaching out to me. You actually found me, on, I do believe, iTunes, a blog post or something like this. Was it the time you just moved to New York?
It was about a year after I'd moved to New York, and I had started working and writing a bit more in the startup space here in New York. For example, there's like the German accelerator space here, the German Chamber of Commerce is pretty active here, and so I was thinking about how I could connect myself better to the German startup scene abroad or here in New York, and this is how I found out about you. I had no idea.
Do you have some memories on stuff we've been doing in the past? Because admittedly, We've been seeing each other the first time in person more than 1 year after we started working together, right?
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, I mean, definitely us meeting was great, and then also strolling through New York a bit together and doing some New York stuff here. Then for me, 1 year being in Austin, Texas, and they're doing a little series about the German startups who presented themselves there. And I would say when it comes to the content, I think I find it always interesting to just wonder what it is or how Germany presents itself abroad and what it is that Germans are known for. And that sometimes I have the impression that Germany has this inferiority complex where we want to present ourselves as like, oh, just as big as Silicon Valley, or we could do this, we could do that. And whereas in reality, Germany is known for engineering, for example, or healthcare now more and more, and that the German startup sector actually changed a lot. And I would think that if you look at the German startup sector, not the one necessarily here in the US, but the one in Germany, is that you can also definitely see some kind of maturity, and that it probably moved away from doing the sexy stuff, but probably more towards what actually works and what Germany is known for.
Very interesting. When I've been thinking what we could talk about, I had one episode in mind we've recorded, I do believe, back in 2017 together with Margaret. I reached out to Margaret, but we couldn't find a recording date right now that we both can make. And I remember we've been very, very late, like 9 or 10 o'clock in the evening here in Germany, and we've been all very tired, and we start laughing, making stupid jokes and stuff like this all the time. We even had at the end a hidden track where I put together some of the takeouts because it was very funny recording. You remember that one?
Yeah, well, I mean, I seem now like the party pooper, but for me, it probably was during the day, and I'd done some other stuff, and so probably I was thinking like, what are those guys doing? But I mean, yeah, there's always one or the other detour, and I think it's good, obviously, to sometimes step back and just summarize things, because I do think that we do have a lot of like interesting company talks, but then also obviously it is interesting to just paint a broader picture and say where Germany is at as a tech country or as a startup country. And so I am generous with you being the silly guys.
And if there's no detour, it's not Startup Radio.
There you go. Yes.
And then we met again when we've been nominated for the Benzinga Global FinTech Awards back in 2018. And I do believe ever since our cooperation got much closer, right now we're getting together at least 10 times a year to do some startup news. Due to Corona, we even get to do 11 recordings most likely this year, maybe even 12. So let's see where this is going. Any outlooks, any wishes, any further ideas?
I mean, I'm definitely curious how Corona is going to affect what German startups will be working on, because as I said, I think we have seen the rise and fall of like the HelloFresh story with Blue Apron and all those meal kits. That I think was a big story. Then we've seen all the scooters coming up and going, and a lot of companies tried this. And we also always see that in Germany, those companies, also the copycats of Uber and Lyft, always have a pretty tough time because Germany is such a heavily regulated market with a strong automotive and mobility industry, which plays a strong role, I think, in when it comes to laws and the legal rules or ground rules for companies like that. And I'm curious to see what Germany will be known for, and how this will further develop. Whether there's going to be like the fintech unicorn. I mean, we're in the middle of the whole Wirecard scandal, which probably, I mean, that one didn't work out so well for Germany as a startup country, but we will see who's going to be the next one. I mean, I guess Germany really has this itch and wants to be the best in something, but then again, as we always take great pride in the German Mittelstand, like the small and medium-sized companies who basically run things in the background, but are oftentimes world champions in their very specialized niche. Probably this will also be the way forward for the German startups. But maybe it's also just me rambling. But I'm curious to see where this all goes.
What I had in mind when we've been talking is usually 2015, 2016, 2017, we always had a Rocket Internet corner when we've been talking about the very present in the German startup media, startup blogs present, startups from Rocket Internet. We called it Rocket Internet corner. And that actually kind of died down, so they're less visible and maybe even less important for the German startup scene, because I remember it wasn't necessarily your favorite.
Yeah, I mean, because I always thought, well, they are approaching startups with a very much like Harvard business mind kind of ideology, and I'm a armchair revolutionary who wants people to build startups because they want to do good in the world, and not necessarily they are looking for the most scalable thing that just looks like eBay or that just looks like Hello Apron or whatever. And so there's always this doubt about Rocket, and but probably I'm also very naive when it comes to these things. So that's usually my little hang up with those things.
There was a prophecy. Hello, apron. Okay, I see.
Did I say that? Yeah, there you go. So yeah, take that as my that's the outlook.
Love it. Thank you, Chris. It was just such a pleasure having you, and looking forward to do a lot more news startup wrap-ups this month in German Startup with you. And we'll have the next recording, I do believe, in a little bit over 6 weeks, right?
Great. Yes, we do. And thanks to you for doing all the work. Let's rock on. I'm looking forward.
Let's move on, last but not least, to the person behind the scene, Pedro, who's our community manager, and he is an expat originally from Portugal, living here in Frankfurt. He became a member of the Startuprad.io team in 2018, and let's see what he has to say about it.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Currently, I'm supporting, I started Frankfurt Valley as one of the initiatives to try to sparkle the international entrepreneurship ecosystem here in Frankfurt. I also support Founders Institute in Frankfurt, the director team. I'm one of the directors. Singularity University. I also advise Mainstage Incubator. And yes, I'm a founder myself, so I'm trying to push a project called X Plus, which is my full-time job at the moment. I moved to Frankfurt 9 years ago in 2011. Very random decision. Well, not so random, but it's just like most of the people. I came because my wife moved from a job opportunity, and I just decided to follow. I've been very involved in different ecosystems. So my first professional experience was in Paris. I joined a startup more than 15 years ago, and I supported the scale up of this startup. We were bought twice. I moved in between the Paris ecosystem to the Spanish one in Madrid, then to Lisbon. So I've been working pretty much in different ecosystems with different startups. Also in Portugal, I worked with other 2 startups. But when I moved here to Frankfurt, I moved for a company that was no longer a startup, was a scale-up. But I was very curious at some point about the startup ecosystem here, and I couldn't find information in English. And the few people that I found were 2. It was you and Paul from Rhymine Startups at that time. I somehow tried to connect with you both to try to see how could I support and get more involved and try to sparkle a bit the ecosystem. And that's how we met in first place. What I found out was there were some very interesting initiatives, like, for example, Rhymine Rocks. And I felt that we would need to keep this philosophy, and I identified quite much with the term Frankfurt Valley, and I felt it was quite interesting that no one was using the term Frankfurt Valley at that time, when in Berlin there was a big outlet called Berlin Valley at that time, and I felt, okay, if I start using the hashtag Frankfurt Valley, if I reserve all of the social media channels with this hashtag, and if I even start organizing events offline using this name, would it grow? So I started testing it, and it started to grow. It got some attention. It got some feedback from a lot of people. So in a way, it's like a startup guide that helps people to find information about the ecosystem in English. And as I am not a content producer full time, I tend to just aggregate multiple sources and just share what the others are talking. And mainly, I really try to find English content because I believe that from an external perspective, it's very interesting for external stakeholders to find this information. And if it's in German, most of the times, it's going to be very difficult that people will ever read it. And at the same time, when I detected this, I also tried to motivate others to do the same. So that's when I entered in contact with Rhine-Main startups, for example, now Station, and I'm inclusive one of their external publishers or guest writer, because I do believe that there are certain points that deserve to be shared in English in order to get a bigger visibility for external stakeholders. Mm-hmm. So I feel like when I tried to join the ecosystem, it was very much difficult. There was not such a thing that we could call an international community. And I feel that luckily things changed a lot. So over the years, not only it got bigger, the community, but as well much more international and much more open to do cooperations between the different stakeholders. So I feel that over the years, the last 4 to 5 years, the change was dramatically and very positive in a way. So the ecosystem growed a lot in terms of numbers of founders, numbers of startups, the amount of platforms that were launched to support the ecosystem growth, and as well the way that those platforms were built. I believe that have created a very interesting ecosystem in the city. So congratulations, everyone, because I think Frankfurt is doing a good job. And I think there are ways that make it much more easier today for any type of founder, even a German or a non-German person, to start a business in Frankfurt. I feel like if I have an idea now, I know at least 5 or 6 programs that I can join and try to launch the program there, or the idea there. And that's something that some years ago was not so easy to do. So for example, Founders Institute is one. I'm proud to be part of it, but there are multiple other platforms that were launched, not only on our early stage, but as scale up. And some programs are by corporate, some others are from the government. So I think that there are plenty of options for a founder or for a startup to grow. Well, I really think that what Startup Radio has been doing is a very great job. So when I see that all the podcasts, all the videocasts that you are producing are seen and heard in so many countries, I think it's something that it's only possible, one, because you do it in English, two, because the content is pretty much exclusive and very relevant. So there is a lot of people that are listening to it and approaching with questions, asking for connections. So I think the impact that Startup Radio has in the ecosystem is much bigger than some people may be aware of. And I just should say congratulations and thank you for letting me be part of it, because I believe that doing this kind of connections as a value that supports a lot the ecosystem to grow. It may be difficult to track and say the ROI of a very exclusive or a very precise epic example, but even the people that you interview, when they share it, their stakeholders or their shareholders will maybe approach them with feedback towards something that you discussed. So you are opening doors to everyone that is interviewed for you. Thank you. See you guys.
That's all, folks. Find more news, streams, events, and interviews at www.startuprad.io. Remember, sharing is caring.